are live for another week of FTMIG on the Midas Letter Network. Today, you will notice that when this camera comes away from my face, it is actually someone other than Karl, because before we get into the rest of the stuff that we're doing today, we are starting with Tony Barassi, VP of Exploration from Triumph Gold Corp. How are you doing today? Pleasure to come on the show. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Appreciate that. As we all know, some of our investors have been looking into TIG over the last little while, but today you came up with new results. So I shot you guys over an email. You're in Toronto, and I thought we need to get you in here, because who else better to talk about them than the man who planned the whole thing out?
Yeah, no, it was quite serendipitous that I was here, and I'm awfully glad to be on the show.
No, absolutely, I appreciate it. So for those who don't know you, you work, obviously, in exploration, but can you give us a little bit of background of who you are before we dig into what you found today?
Sure, I am an exploration geologist. I've been working on porphyry and epithermal style gold and copper projects throughout British Columbia, Yukon, and a few other places for about the last 14 years.
Oh, wow.
I have a doctorate from Dalhousie University in economic geology, and I've done quite a wide variety of work looking at how metals come to concentrate within mountain building scenarios.
Yeah.
And that's some of the experience that I brought to this property, trying to find gold and copper, and it's sort of every explorationist's dream to take the theories that they know and be able to apply them, and then to have success with that.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it sounds like you guys have done today. Another hole coming out. This is now 2 that have been announced in the last few weeks. And I think it's interesting to note as well is that in doing more due diligence and digging into Triumph, this company was actually, or this land was mined some years ago, and you came in, you took months and months going over the different drill results and different information that's there, and you made a different plan. What was different this time that now you're coming up with these really, really great porphyry results? Sure.
So, there's a long history of exploration of this property, starting about 1930. The old-time prospectors were coming out and poking away and finding gold, and there's a bunch of old and even current placer mines where people are mining gold that's in the creeks on the property. What we're looking for is gold in the bedrock. In 2006, our company's founder, Bill Harris, consolidated a whole bunch of different properties that were owned by various companies and individuals at different times into a very large land package. It's 200 square kilometer land package.
Massive.
It's a really big property. And that was sort of the first step to being able to take a broad approach to exploration, because when you have 200 square kilometers that are divided up into 30 different companies and everyone's not talking to one another, it's hard to know how the geology connects together and how you can conduct good exploration. So that was the first step. And then between 2006 and 2012, our company, under a different name, did a tremendous amount of exploration on the property, and that culminated with the development of 3 43-101 compliant resources. So sort of a definition of how much metal is in the ground in 3 different locations. That took a lot of work to do, and they need to be commended on taking that approach and going through all of the effort that it takes to do that. But during the last couple of years of that definition drilling, where they're defining those resources, they stepped away from pure exploration, not looking at the property as an exploration target, but rather just get the drills in the right configuration to define how much metal is in the ground in these known locations. So the new approach that was taken after 2012 was to look at the property purely as an exploration play.
Okay.
In 2016, I came onto the project as a technical consultant, and what we did was we looked at all of the huge amount of data that had been collected from the property, and we tried to identify locations where there were really good grades of gold and silver, but not a good explanation for why that was there.
Okay.
And we found in particular 3 drill holes that had excellent grade in the revenue area that weren't associated with the main control on mineralization at revenue. So revenue is a mineral, one of our deposit areas where the main geological control on the mineralization is, or was thought to be, the emplacement of a diatreme. So a diatreme is the root of a highly explosive volcano. It sort of looks like a golf tee in shape, like this. And all around the edge of the diatreme, the rock is all busted up and fluids moved through it. The fluids were rich in gold and copper and molybdenum, and they precipitated those metals. And so that's why there's some mineralization there. But we found mineralization there that wasn't associated with the emplacement of that diatreme. And when we went to the property to follow up on those results and looked at the core that was drilled, we found that it looked like porphyry-style mineralization. And porphyry-style mineralization that predated the emplacement of that diatreme, and therefore could not possibly be related to the emplacement of the diatreme. So now you imagine a landscape that has something that's the shape and size of a volcano. And most of the exploration had been focused around the edge of that volcano. But in fact, that volcano was emplaced into something that was much, much larger and pre-mineralized. So that's the approach that we took. We had the hypothesis that that was the case, and we started doing exploration over, instead of a 1 kilometer diameter area, a 6 kilometer diameter area. And that's the new approach that we brought to the project, and that's, in a nutshell, what has brought us to the point of having these successes that we're having now.
Yeah, and if we can have our crew pull up, I've got your investor presentation. Just guide me to where we're looking at, because it's always nice to be able to see a different area and look at what exactly we're looking at, because I believe there's a diagram in here that really goes through, oh, here we go, revenue, but there's one that's a little bit more zoomed in than that, just so people can get a little bit of a visualization of what we're talking about. Because you had spoken about...
Oh, if you go up one here, there, you can, this is a model where you can see the golf tee. See the big green golf tee? That's the revenue diatreme. That's the root of the highly explosive volcano. And in the past, exploration focused on this stuff. But there were these 3 drill holes that were drilled outside of the diatreme and away from it. And they had great grades, the kind of grades that anybody would want to mine. You know, like hole 28 had 145 meters of 0.22% copper, half a gram gold, and 0.11% molybdenum. That's more molybdenum than most molybdenum mines have. And what we identified was that that mineralization was not associated with this. It was associated with this massive thing. And so that was then our target for exploration.
Gotcha. Right, and see, this is why I brought up, you get to show everybody. People can start putting it in their head. That's what he was talking about. But no, it's nice to hear, because you've had a lot of things come out in the last one. Going back on porphyry, you had briefly explained a bit. Is porphyry something that you find everywhere? Is that something unique for people who, you know, they're just getting into mining? Maybe they came over from cannabis stocks. Like, what is going on? Everything's going crazy. They want to learn more. What's a porphyry, and what exactly have you found?
Right. So in geology, there's a number of different things that people call porphyries. So it's very confusing, even with geologists, what you're talking about when you're talking about a porphyry. In this case, what we're talking about is a porphyry-related mineralizing system. So it's basically a deposit type, a kind of way that metal accumulates. And porphyry deposits are a type of deposit that forms from an intrusion, so a body of magma that comes up to a high level in the Earth's crust. And as that intrusion is crystallizing and changing from molten to solid at this high level in the Earth's crust, it has a whole bunch of things that create high pressure. So there's a bunch of water vapor in there, and there's an increase in the volume of the body as it crystallizes, and that cracks the rock around it. Yeah. And as it cracks the rock around it, those fluids move up into the rock and they form veins, and the veins have copper and gold and molybdenum in them. That's right. So they're very large deposits because they're on the scale of intrusions, as opposed to some gold deposits, which might be on the scale of just a single vein or a couple of veins. Yeah. So this is something that's very large, but it's really quite low grade compared to many other types of deposits. Mm-hmm. So you tend to get porphyry deposits in areas where you have two tectonic plates, and one is going underneath the other. They're being pushed together, and one goes underneath the other, and the one that's going underneath melts, and it comes up, and it makes this intrusion come up into usually where there's already some mountains from the plates crushing up against one another. And that's the environment that we're in Yukon, where we're looking for these porphyries. And yeah, so that's the kind of area where you look for these things.
And it's interesting to note that, because you're talking about grades as well. I know we've seen some grade results come out where you see these really high, 40 grams per ton, whatever, but very, very small sections. This is rather large, and from what my understanding is that when you're finding a good grade, and we'll talk about that in a second, because apparently you guys have found actually a very good porphyry, especially in Yukon in that area. But when you're looking for it, when a major comes in, because you guys also have Goldcorp, that is, I believe they own like 19.99% of the company, and there's Zingen, I might be getting that name wrong there, but two majors are going in, and what they're looking for are economies of scale. They want something they can mine for years and years and years. They don't just want a really rich, tiny area, they want a large area. Have you found, or are on the premise of, or precipice, I should say, of finding what they're looking for something to buy out in the future?
Sure. Okay, so here's the thing about porphyries, is they're very large, but they're very low grade compared to other types of deposits. And because they're very large, it takes forever to prove that you've got something that's big enough to have the full amount of metals that you would need to mine the porphyry. Yeah. So what we've done this year is, and to some extent last year as well, is just the very first step of showing that you're really onto something. Yeah. Okay, so all along the western side of North America, there are probably 10,000 porphyries, and most of them have very, very low grade. And some of them have slightly higher grade, kind of just enough to tease you and make you want to do more exploration on them. Yeah. And most of the exploration properties that people are conducting exploration on right now do not have a single drill intersection over sort of open pit sized exploration intersection that is economic grade. Most of them only have something that's close enough to it that it's still worth looking for some more. Yeah. Well, what we've done now is we've made an intersection that's over an open pit size distance, 313 meters, that is undoubtedly mineable grade. Okay.
Good to hear.
So whereas out of that 10,000 porphyries that are along Western North America, with 99% of them having not yet had an economic style intersection, this one has. So we've now risen to the top of the heap with regards to having a long intersection of potentially economic grade. We still have a tremendous amount of work in front of us, though, because we're going to have to try to define this grade of body over a very large area.
Yeah. Now, when you first started, though, this is, I mean, we saw the results come out today, and again, we are going to speak about that very specifically. But when you had Goldcorp approach you, what changed their mind? What made them want to actually say, you know what, I think they're onto something, because from what I know, I was talking to John and people, like, it's because of you. You were able to show them, hey, look, I really think there's something here. And you did so in a way that they were almost a controlling interest bought into this company, another massive major as well. What did they see? What were you able to show them? And it looks like now you're actually trying to prove it. But what was it that first caught their attention?
Right. Well, when Goldcorp bought coffee, I think that my impression is that they were looking to do more than just mine coffee. Yeah. They want to be wholly into the Yukon as a district place. So they were looking for good projects in the Yukon. And from the point of view of where our location is, where we're along a road, we have good infrastructure, we're not too far from them, there were a lot of synergies in that regard. Yeah. But I think the real catalyst for those guys to have become interested in investing in us was in 2016, after I had gone up and done the sort of meta-analysis, looking to see what the exploration potential of the property was. And I had gone back to Yukon in November of 2016 and presented that exploration potential at a conference that's hosted by the Yukon Geological Survey called Yukon Geoscience Forum. And the Goldcorp guys were there. They had recently acquired coffee. They had reviewed our project. They liked the location, they liked the road. Yeah. But from their point of view, it didn't cut it yet. But when we showed them the exploration potential, really, when we showed them that idea that I was just showing you, that the diatreme is just a limited part of a much larger system that has yet to be explored, that's what really convinced them, because they really bought into the exploration potential. And I think that they must be pretty pleased that they did, because in the end, you know, with just 2 years of work, we've shown that exploration potential to be an exploration reality.
Absolutely.
We've come up with the best intersection of porphyry-style mineralization that the Yukon has seen yet.
And that's a perfect segue then. Let's go into the actual results from today. I have got it up here. We'll go over to the announcement here, where this is your one from today in your blue sky porphyry system, where we'll go down here. And going back, going away from rocks for a second, it was very interesting actually. I know Karl and I are going to talk about this later. The stock price as of today, I think we saw a lot of traders get out really early. It's rebounded very nicely and it's going in the right direction, which is fantastic to see. Especially seeing myself, I'm an investor.
Sure.
I want to be able to see that myself.
Yeah, me too. But I'll let you guys decide why that's happening. As far as I'm concerned, it should all be about how much metal's in the ground. But there's a lot of other stuff going on.
It's amazing, and this has got nothing to do with Triumph whatsoever. It's amazing how many terrible companies have amazing stocks, and how amazing companies have terrible stocks. Yeah. You know, I've been studying it for years, and I still don't have answers. So it's nice to see when you've got a company who, you know, they've got a lot going for them and their stock's following. I'm like, okay, the market's actually paying attention for a second.
Right.
And just to be very clear as well, because you are on their website here, you guys are a client of FTMIG.com, hence why we've got all of your news releases on here as well, just to full disclosure there moving forward. But going into this, so what are we seeing here? What are all these numbers? For someone who has no idea what's going on here, what does this read? What did you find?
Well, the real star of this show is hole 19. And hole 19 has 316 meters of over a gram per ton gold and almost 0.3% copper. And that's at any mine at any porphyry deposit, that would be part of what they would mine. Yeah. And it's higher grade than what a lot of existing porphyry deposits that are mined have. So and it's also, you know, a lot of porphyry deposits will have a pit that, for instance, is only 200 meters deep, like from surface to the bottom. So this is very much a mineable sized interval. Now, if you had a grade like that, you'd be able to afford to have a pit that's significantly deeper than 200 meters. So that's what you're seeing with hole 1819. If you look at the if you look at the gold times, or gold equivalent times meters, it works out to about 560.
Yeah, I think it's 63 or 64. I have it as well, but it's on Facebook. We don't like pulling it up 'cause it says
565 gold equivalent grams per meter. And if you look at just, not gold equivalent, but just gold times meters for intersections that were made on exploration properties last year, this intersection would have placed 8th in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the list that I'm referring to has just gold, whereas we have gold equivalent, which includes some other elements. But it shows the magnitude of how impressive this this intersection is.
And even just for some of our investors, because like a lot of us, we pay attention to numerous stocks and all that. And I saw someone post in our Follow the Money investment group, our investor group, in our Facebook, you'll see a post and it shows that the same number, I think it was 564 or 63 grams of gold equivalent over times meters. It's amazing though, because that was higher than Sokoman, higher than Golden Ridge, and higher than Aben as well. And for anybody who's been watching stocks recently, all three of those have been really, really hot picks for stocks to be into. And it's interesting to see that this is just one of your holes, and then from that one hole, you actually did better than the others of the three. That's a good sign to see.
Yeah, no, it's right up there at the top of the list of stuff coming out of Golden Triangle, BC, Yukon. I think GT Gold just came out with a really good porphyry hit from northern BC, and I think we're just one or two above them for that one.
Yeah. Are you being modest there?
No, I think that really is the case.
Just very close. Now, you've got two really nice drill results over the last little while. What do you have coming up in the future? Because are you trying to show that these are obviously connected? Am I reading that properly?
Okay, so a lot of investors are only just sort of tuning into the story right now.
Correct,
and that's totally understandable. What we've put out so far this year are 3 press releases. And the first one has really passed people by because it was sort of our first one and people weren't following us. But we actually put out some pretty exceptional results in our very first press release, which is something that not really on anyone's radar.
Yeah.
And this is where we were drilling an area that's to the west of this blue sky porphyry that we're putting out results about right now. The blue sky porphyry was actually a discovery that was kind of partly made in an effort to follow up on some previously known higher grade mineralization, and we missed that mineralization and hit the blue sky zone porphyry instead and then followed up on it. But this year we were able to follow up on that original high grade mineralization that we had been trying to find when we first hit the blue sky porphyry. And we call that the WOW breccius, spelled W-A-U, because it's got a bit of tungsten and gold.
If we can get my computer back up the screen here, because just so we can keep talking, because it shows the blue sky on here as well. I believe this one may have, I don't know if it's the one you're talking, because I think this one's a little bit older here. But I know that you've got all your different sections, because you've got numerous different targets over the next little while. But sorry, I just wanted that up there so people can visualize what we're looking at as well.
Yeah, so the blue sky porphyry is over in here. And we found it while we were looking for some high grade stuff over in here. And at the beginning of this year, we thought that we had finally sort of zeroed in on where that high grade mineralization might be. We tied together 3 drill holes that had pierced this thing in the past. And did some 3D modeling, and we tried to hit it with 5 holes this year, and we hit it with every single one of them. So those were pretty great results. For example, 72 meters of 1.33 grams gold equivalent, 128 meters of 1.27 grams gold equivalent, 43 meters of 1.5 grams gold equivalent. So that was really our first big success this year, was defining that WOW breccia zone. And so I don't want that to sort of go by the wayside. I think this is a good opportunity to remind people that we've come out with quite a few successes this year beyond just the blue sky porphyry. Now with the blue sky porphyry, we've put out 2 press releases, And in those press releases, we've put out 6 drill holes that had very high grade copper and gold mineralization, as well as 2 drill holes from last year that hit the same zone that sort of got us into it, told us there was something there, and a couple of other holes that hit just a lower grade but still potentially economic halo around this thing. Yeah. So we've put, the reason why I've gone into this is because you sort of said that we put out 2 holes, but it's 2 press releases with quite a few holes. So we've really defined this zone very well over the area where we've defined it. Now we've put out all of the results that are related to the blue sky porphyry and the wow breccia. All of those results are out now for this year. There's no more drilling that we've done in those zones, so you can't expect to be getting any more results about those zones. Yeah. And you might wonder why we would hit something that's so awesome and then stop drilling it when we could have kept on going. And part of the reason why we did that is because we're keeping our eye on an even bigger prize. Really? That's right. So.
And whereabouts is that in here? Or are you allowed saying?
No, I will tell you. It's the whole bloody thing. Yeah. Okay? And it's hard to really wrap your head around it. But I think, and the main objective of what we're doing moving forward is to test and prove the hypothesis that all of the things that are going on across this 6-kilometer zone of different mineral types and mineral deposits and occurrences is related to one elephant that's underlying the whole thing.
Really?
Okay, so what we have here is a 6-kilometer from end to end, enormous, really intense multi-element soil anomaly with a coincident chargeability anomaly, so a geophysical anomaly. Yep. And contained within this vast area is, well, first of all, 2 resources, one at Nucleus and one at Revenue. The one at Nucleus is an epithermal style deposit, and it is so sort of high level, low temperature, gold rich style deposit.
Very nice.
Here we have a diatreme, which is the root of a highly explosive volcano that's busting up through the crust. And just on the edge of it, we have the wow breccia, which is a hydrothermal breccia. And then here we have the blue sky porphyry system. And then each of these other areas also has really interesting stuff. And we're convinced that all of the rock that hosts these mineralized systems is a passive host. So it's not the cause of the mineralization. The cause of the mineralization is yet to be reached. Okay? Yeah. So if you imagine you have something deep down underneath this, which we believe is the actual big porphyry system, and all of these things are coming up from it. So at high level over here, you get epithermal gold from fluids coming up through a fault system. Right smack in the middle of the thing, you have a volcano burst up out of it that's mineralized, coming up out of this porphyry intrusion underneath it. Over here, you have a structural zone where different faults were moving in different directions, and there's a whole bunch of permeability in the rock, so fluids can come up and cause a bunch of mineralization in the wow breccia and the blue sky zone. So moving forward with exploration on other parts of this area was imperative to testing that idea, because we need to figure out how all of this pieces together into a much larger story. Yeah. So we're not chasing rabbits here, we're chasing an elephant. Yeah. And all of these little things are the rabbits.
So I'm going to go into Mr. Speculation mode.
Sure.
I'm an investor. I have shares. What are you're quite confident that, or very hopeful that these are all connected. What does it mean if they are connected and we have really great porphyry results over on this side here, the nucleus as well. We have a lot of good things. What does it mean if there's an even bigger one underneath for the company, for any of these? Is it going to be like tenfold of everything else if it does exist?
That's the hope. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Well, hey, I appreciate it. We've exhausted your time. I know you're still in Toronto doing a couple other things. It's been fantastic having you on, because I guarantee a lot of the things you just said, that a lot of our investors who are maybe newer to mining, or even they are a little bit into mining, they love hearing stuff right from the source. I love talking to people who are smarter than me in their own different genres, and especially with this. I'm watching this and it's blowing me away, because I've never seen some of these things that you're pointing out. It's been really interesting. I appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll have you on again very soon. But really, just before we leave though,
sure.
How many more drills do you still have going on at the moment?
We're finished drilling at the moment. Yeah, we just mowed the last drill out a couple of weeks ago.
Gotcha.
We had 2 on the property. I think we still have about just under half of our results are yet to be released.
Gotcha.
So stay tuned.
We still got some more coming. Well, I appreciate your time very much.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And now we're going to be going off to another segment as well, because we just did mining. We're going right into cannabis actually for Kamal Evans right now. And our next guest today is Kamal Evans, master grower and consultant over in the BC area. How are you doing, sir?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. You know, it's another day just watching the market in cannabis and mining as well. Lots of rockets, lots of things going down, but for this particular interview with you, we're actually going to be skipping away from the actual investment side of things, but more so going into cannabis in general, because a lot of people, although they do invest in cannabis, and a lot of people are right now, how many people out there actually truly understand the plant and understand where the market might be going and different technologies coming up? That's what we want to focus on. I've heard one of your podcasts before. You're definitely the man to be speaking to.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And now for yourself, in a more specific question, you know, we're looking at the cannabis sector. You're looking at it from an investment side. Obviously, it's ramping up, but from cannabis as an actual commodity or a product and the sector and where it's going, where do you see where we are right now just compared to a couple of years ago, and where do you think we're going to be going in 2019? What are the hot topics in cannabis going to be?
I think one of them will definitely be tissue culture, which is a form of micro-propagation where you're taking a very, very small piece of a plant, and you're able to take that small piece and turn it into 4 pieces. And you take those 4 pieces and turn them into 32 pieces. And it just gets exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger until you have all of these little stable cuttings of plants sitting in agar. And then when you need to actually pull the trigger and send someone like Tilray, say 30,000 plants, you can send them 30,000 plants that are identical. Everyone is exactly the same. Everyone is pathogen free. And so by the time they grow them out, the chances of there actually being a disease or anything that comes in and affects your yield or anything like that is very, very minimal. Right now, what everyone is doing is we're all taking cuttings from mothers. We have mother plants, and some people step off plants where you have a whole bunch of plants that are in veg, and then you take cuttings from those, and then you cuttings from those, and take cuttings from those. And there is some fear in the industry that as you clone and clone and clone a plant, the genetics actually get tired. So tissue culture is going to be a really, really big one moving forward, especially in craft where you don't have a lot of space and you don't really want to be gobbling up that space trying to rear plants. You just kind of want to take plants in, flower them, and then on to the next, take new plants in, flower them on to the next. So definitely watch out for that. That's going to be a really big part of the cannabis industry moving forward for sure.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you say that actually, because when it comes to people who just continue to take clones over and over and over again, what many, again, going back to investors just to tap into this, what many people don't realize is that, you know, everyone's saying, oh, we've got these 3 million square foot facilities, we're growing this much, we're going to do this. There's so many promises, but not many, except for the elite companies that are currently, you know, the elite LPs in Canada right now, not many of them have gotten to that point. And quite frankly, I don't know if many of them will get to that point, because it's not easy to grow cannabis in large amounts whatsoever. So it's interesting to hear that. Are there any companies currently that you know of who are doing it this way?
There are a couple companies that are just kind of getting started, but it takes a really long time to get your stock up because, like I said, you're only starting with a very small piece of the plant and putting that in agar, and you keep it almost in stasis until it's time to pull the trigger. I don't know of any companies off the top of my head that are really far along in tissue culture. I know everyone who is taking this seriously is definitely looking at it as the only viable means for mass production. It's really the only way that you can get away with being able to flower that at once. And then on top of that, I just did a consult for a group up on the northern tip of Vancouver Island, and their projections were like you would expect, where they thought, okay, you know, we're going to fire up our facility and we have 10 rooms and we're going to have 10 rooms flowering. It's going to be great. And like that 2-month flowering cycle, if somehow by magic you were able to get every single room populated with plants, who are you going to hire to harvest all these plants at the same time? Because you're talking about thousands of people that you would have to have, or hundreds of people at least working around the clock to be able to harvest these. So you also have to take into account that you have to stagger your harvest. Each room has to come on and off at a certain time. You have to know exactly when that's going to happen. So it takes a lot of scheduling.
And it's funny that you say that, because I've actually spoken to some companies, usually smaller ones, and I'll ask them certain questions and they'll look at me like, oh, that's a good question. I'm like, I know, that's why I asked it. You have millions of dollars in your system and you haven't even started that yet. But tissue culture, that's really interesting. I'll be looking out for that for certain companies to see which ones adopt that, because it sounds like it's got a lot of longevity for it, and it sounds like it's where the industry is going. But not just growing plants, obviously, in this industry. We've only recently started actually talking about the different cannabinoids and how it relates to our endocannabinoid system and the different medicines and different products coming out. Are there any things that you're excited about that you've heard, whether it be like CBL, CBG, CBD, that you're like, wow, I knew about this, I can't wait until this gets mainstream and actually is a product you can grab on the store?
So I guess the most exciting for me right now is the fact that they just recently found that they can harvest cannabidiol, which is CBD, from hops. And being that CBD is still considered a scheduled substance, just like THC, and is controlled, we can't import CBD from the U.S. legally right now. There's a few groups that can, but there's a lot of red tape attached to it. But in the U.S., they've now been able to harvest CBD from hops, and so that makes it not a controlled substance, and so that opens up a whole other side of the market, and that's really exciting. And then you have cannabigerol, which is, we're getting some delay here. That's okay. Cannabigerol is CBG, which is kind of like the stem cell of the cannabis plant. And all of the other cannabinoids are actually formed from CBG, with the exception of a few. And there's some really exciting work going on with neurodegenerative diseases. I'm seeing in my consulting people using it for stuff like Parkinson's or Huntington's disease, and then the terpenes, which are like the unsung heroes of the cannabis plant. Something like myrcene that you find in hops is really relaxing and sedative. You can use it for people that are having trouble getting to sleep and staying asleep. And then you have stuff like linalool, which is really exciting. You find that in lavender, and they just did a clinical trial that I was checking out for an article that I'm writing for a magazine. And in this trial, they were using vaporized lavender oil, and people who had chronic pain and were taking opioids for their pain were able to take 50% less opioids when they were breathing in this vaporized lavender oil, which is linalool, which you find in copious amounts in lots of different strains. So there's going to be a lot of new medicines and new applications for cannabis that people didn't even think of. As well, you're going to see a lot of other nutraceutical plants being mixed with the cannabis plant once people are able to get proper dealer's licenses and make these formulations.
Yeah, and I love that point that you brought up when it comes to opioids, because a lot of people know that cannabis is, you're able to use cannabis to help you with pain, but I'm sorry, when you come to really chronic pain, there's still going to be, at least for right now, there's going to be a need for still having your oxycodone or your Tylenol 3s, whatever it be. But to be able to find a natural plant like cannabis, or even a terpene from cannabis and be able to have the same effects with using so much less of a dosage. I truly believe, like, I watch sports all the time, and it's so sad when you see these people from the NFL or hockey, whatever it be, and they start getting addicted to these drugs because they use it so much with their careers. If we can find ways to get them natural products that are much less addictive, if not no addictive properties to it, and you're having a much lower dose of these pain medication, you can quite literally change the entire space when it comes to pharmaceutical drugs that are for pain. But it doesn't stop there. It goes to gut rot. And like you said, it goes to Parkinson's. I watched some guy take some THC oil and he had his Parkinson's, and he was shaking around, and then all of a sudden he was calm. And he was able to go. I know certain people. There's someone I used to work with. Her son has Angelman disease, I believe that's what it's called, but also epilepsy, severe epilepsy. And because of cannabis, he now has almost no or very few seizures, opposed to the dozens that he was having a week. It's changing people's lives, and we've suppressed it for so long. And we're at the very beginning of it really taking off. And what companies are going to take over this? I know Canopy Health. I don't know if you looked into them much. Last I checked, they had 29 patents pending for cannabinoids and different things, for sleep deprivation, for all that. It's incredible how our bodies intake cannabinoids, and we really, I don't know about you, I know you know a lot more than I do, we almost still have no clue for all these other purposes we could be using it for.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true, and it's interesting that you brought up the sports medicine and the application of cannabinoids in sports medicine, because you have a lot of people who are my wife's brother. He's actually had some pretty brutal injuries to his brain playing sports, aggressive sports, not even that aggressive, but playing lots of sports. And cannabigerol is something that's actually regenerative. It's able to help your body create new brain cells. And then you have THC acid, which is neuroprotective. So it's actually helping your body mend damaged neurons and brain cells. So it's a really, really exciting time for cannabis medicine and for sports medicine. And there's something else that you said that really struck me. But anyways, one thing that I did want to talk about was Lyme disease, and that is prevalent. It's becoming almost a pandemic. It's so rife in the States, and I've been working a lot with Lyme disease in my consulting, and I found that there's a lot of cannabinoids and terpenes that are actually able to kill a lot of the bacteria and co-infections that come with Lyme. And I've actually had a few people get into full remission from Lyme disease, where when I met them, I shook their hand and they were lying in bed because they hadn't been out of bed in a couple of years. And after 6 weeks working with them, they were actually able to get out of bed and start living their life again. So there's so much that's happening and so many exciting things, and a lot of different places where people can invest and make money while people are getting the help that they need, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I've never heard of Lyme disease before. I've never heard of that. And this is something I actually look into because it fascinates me just from a standpoint of fascination. But also, like you said, I do want to invest in these companies that are going down this road, because I think it's going to be a remarkable turning. Like, the entire pharmaceutical industry is going to be turned upside down by this in many different ways. But Lyme disease, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's wild how many people actually have it. And then on the production side, I've been doing a little trial for an LED company called ALD Green Tech, and it's really interesting. It's the first time I've actually ever seen flowers that were decent grown under LED lights. That, and I went and checked out Remo. I don't know if you know Remo. He's an age-old cannabis activist, but I went and checked out his garden. He was growing under LED lights as well. And something that's not getting a lot of light right now is the power that's going to be needed to grow all of this cannabis, because as so much as we're growing it in greenhouses on huge scale, like Canopy and Emerald and companies like that, with passive solar, where you're actually using some of the daylight, a lot of companies are growing just solely indoors. And when you're using that much power and you're growing year round, you're trying to cool the summer and you're trying to heat the winter. You're growing with these really inefficient high intensity discharge lights, like the Gavitas and stuff like that. they're amazing lights and they produce a really great product. But once we have enough producers in Canada, they're going to be gobbling up a monumental amount of power. And I think it's important that we start really researching green technologies for cannabis production, like water capture, water recapture, having your humidifiers feeding all that water that they're taking out of the air and purifying it and feeding it back to the plants. LED, like I said, is a really big one. So I'm really excited to see more research and more trials going into ceramic metal halides and more efficient lighting, because a lot of companies just roll in, they're like, hey, what works? We want this to work. We know that works. We're going to go with that. Even if it isn't the most efficient, they know that it works and it's tried and tested. And then you have other companies like Ravensquest up north where they're going the opposite route. They're doing all these really new technologies that aren't proven, which is also kind of risky. But kudos to them for trying to be green.
Yeah, and you know, Marican, one of the reasons why I invested in the first place is their facility is actually 92% to net zero for carbon emissions and all that, because they do that. They looked at, okay, we know that cannabis prices are going to really come down. And this is something important. This isn't just American. This is the entire industry. If you're not having a facility that can cut down your costs in every way form, it's not cheap growing cannabis. And although I don't think it's going to happen the same in Colorado and Washington, where the prices were dramatically slashed, because we do have exports. We have areas for our supply to start going when our supply finally reaches and surpasses demand. But it's going to come down. It's not going to be $10 a gram for everybody. There's going to be your Canadians and your Coronas. There's going to be your buck of beers out there. If Ford is here in Ontario, he's going to $1 a gram. Who knows what he does? But there's going to be cheaper cannabis, and you have to be able to compete. And from a green standpoint, from just you know, not wasting that much energy, but also from the standpoint of a company that needs to have good profit margins. It's very important to look at these things, and it'll be interesting to see the evolution of the lighting and of these different elements. And who better to know than a master grower who's currently or always looking for the newest, best things to do for his plants.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time, and one thing that I find really stifling about the whole market is Health Canada's approach to labeling and packaging. I think that it's going to become a gating item for people to really know what they're getting and source what they need. I've been studying a lot on the testing of cannabis. Like I said, I've been working with a company called Blockstrain that is all about mapping the genome of the cannabis and making sure that the producers know exactly what they're getting, and that way the consumers know exactly what they're getting. If you're buying CBD oil for your child, the last thing you want is for there to be a mistake and all of a sudden your child is getting THC. So being able to map out what the plants are and know what they are on both ends at all times is absolutely imperative in this industry. And I think it's really exciting that you have companies that are actually trying to do that from like the ground level. And with Health Canada being so restrictive about what you can say and what you can show on your packaging, it's really hard for consumers to be able to buy their medicine or buy their recreational products with confidence, knowing exactly what's in them, because it's so restrictive on what you could say is in them.
Yeah, and we're going to be figuring it out for a long time, but you know what? They took a cautious approach to it. This is something new. It's different. It hasn't been around for 80, 90 years, however long Prohibition's been going. It's been a heck of a long time, but it's really, really exciting that Canada's at the forefront. We've got people like yourself who are constantly looking for the next big thing and helping this process move along. And just from an investor standpoint, from an economist standpoint, and from just a citizen of Canada and of the world, this plant's going to change so many people's lives. It's been exciting talking to you about that. I hope to be able to get you on again as you continue these tests and continue these different developments, because myself, I know I want to learn more about this, but also for all of our different viewers as well. You got to learn about the companies that you're investing in, and that means learning at what they're doing to know who's doing it well, who's sucking up all the energy, and they're not going to be able to compete in 2 years, and who has a facility that you know, they've been able to decrease the cost of the electricity, they're reusing their water, and they're actually moving forward. So really interesting talk. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here, and if you're up to it, I'd love to do this again soon in the very near future.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
You too.
And we're back. Those were 2 educational sessions in a row. That was fantastic.
Both awesome. Is this on? Everyone hear me?
I think it's on. Yeah.
All right.
I think you're good to go. I think you also have your laptop still on as well.
I did.
But
Confusing myself.
I love talking to people like Kamal, because I keep telling everyone, yes, we've gone through this crazy cannabis swing, especially with stocks and all of that. But the sector is still so much in its infant stage. When you're talking about all the cannabinoids and all the different things that are coming up, I want to finally see it. There's so many different things that are still yet to come. We haven't even thought about them yet.
And what stocks are running today?
Oh, I don't know. There's one, Juju. Juju is definitely running. What was that, up 22% or 17%?
Yep.
DNAX, block strain, that's up like 30% or something like that. But there's a theme there. What's the theme?
What about American? American's at 240.
American's ripping. I didn't see American earlier. I was on the show.
So that would be the small caps and the mid caps are running.
Did you say that before?
I did. I was walking around here and I heard some people going, I don't know what's going on with these. They're just, these small caps are going off for no reason. I'm thinking, they need to watch the show.
You need to watch the show. You need to watch watch history, because people have made their money in Chronos. They made their money in Canopy. They made their money. I think Aurora is actually still going. They're making some really big moves.
Well, they were kind of lagging. But yeah, there's some profits from what I see.
And
there's
where
some
they put them?
profits getting pulled in the big guys. And
they put them in the small caps.
That's where they go.
Actually, speaking of Aurora, someone was telling me they were so angry that they bought ICC Labs. They were angry because they were saying, oh, this is more dilution, all this kind of. Do you not realize how strategic that was for Aurora? ICC Labs has always been how the hell is it so cheap for so long? Because they have supply deals with Brasliv, which is a Brazilian government company. They've got supply deals with Mexico. They have supply deals with Colombia. They're growing in Colombia. They're one of 2 private growers in all of Uruguay. They have a massive facility. They're already growing 700 acres of hemp. They had that massive, it's 150 kilograms of CBD crystal to Nuvera, which is now Afria. Why wouldn't you buy them out?
I don't know, Brandon.
I know, let's get closer, this is weird. but why wouldn't you buy them out? And just for someone to say, oh, dilution, you're thinking about today. If you're holding Canopy, if you're holding Aurora, if you're holding Afria, yeah, you could probably make a quick flip on them. Those are companies that you're going to be holding, in my personal opinion. Those are companies you're going to hold because 5 years, 10 years down the road, these are going to be massive conglomerates. We're going to look back and how on earth did we ever know about those in single digits? I personally think.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's different, right? Some people like to enjoy the run and then they pull their profit and they're out of the markets for 6 months and whatever. And hey, why wouldn't they do that? If you've been doing that for 3 years, you've been pretty successful.
Absolutely.
But no, I mean, I'm with you. I see what you're saying with the bigger picture in these companies. And obviously, Canopy has a different way of going about things. They're back. They've got $5 million or whatever to start, looking at.
A few pennies.
We got a little bit behind them. And now we got Canopy Rivers coming. So that was a great interview that James did yesterday with Bruce.
He did, absolutely. Yeah. And Bruce is always a stud, everything he does.
Yeah, I love watching. I go back and watch interviews with him over the last couple of years to see where we're at now.
Isn't it crazy?
It's crazy.
Because I know you've been investing as long as I have in cannabis, and it's the amount of roller coasters that we've been going through, and everyone was freaking out over this summer. Don't get me wrong, I sold a lot of my cannabis stocks probably in the spring. I should have earlier, hindsight.
Yeah.
But I saw it continuing going down, so I actually saved a lot of losses doing it that way. But for the ones I did keep, or the ones I had really, really low, we've seen this before.
Well, you know what? I was thinking about a lot of people over the last week, just because, the cannabis space is really rocking right now. 2-3 years ago, in all these chat rooms that I was in and different Facebook groups, man, it's changed a lot of people's lives. Even some people maybe I didn't get along with in the past, whatever it is, what it is, just different views on stocks, But it's changed a lot of people's lives. Look at Namaste right now. Where is it? Can you pull that up?
Yeah.
It's probably around 350.
Give me a second here. We can pull it up on the
I remember when that was around 20 cents, and these were
361.
Yeah, these were the people I was thinking about. They were like, man, Namaste's going to be huge, and it was around 20, 25 cents. And you guys, you know who you are.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for everybody. I'm happy for those people, and they're talking about an uplist right, which might be coming. Maybe that's why it's running right now. There's a big Namaste party.
And it's funny because they heard
Tonight?
Snoop Dogg was going to it. It is today, actually.
Yeah.
Shout out to Todd. He's one of our administrators down there right now. And it was funny that when people saw that Snoop Dogg was coming to that concert, like, oh, they're in with Canopy. There's going to be did you not remember just a few months ago they actually have a supply deal with Canopy? Like they're already working along with each other. But speaking of those people, and speaking of the whole, everyone was freaking out in the summer and they thought cannabis was dead. Greg, another one of our administrators, close friend of mine, he bought in right before everything started going down. And he looked at me, he's like, 30% down, 40% down. I said, trust me, these are good companies. I really think that these are in good price points. He is still holding. He listened to me for the most part. Now I listen to him because now he's making all the right picks. 24 cents is his average for Namaste.
Oh, really?
24 cents. He has not sold. It looks ridiculous when you see how much money he's made off, like $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah, but you know, like that's a great example, right?
He held.
Yeah.
He saw the greater picture. And Namaste is doing good things. So actually,
you know what? There's some people, like there's some haters out there, and they don't like the way that Sean is doing things, whatever. Personally, I think it's great. I mean, people are talking about them. Whether it's good or bad, if you actually look at what they have going on, you know what I mean? Like, it's just great. They've got everybody talking about them. We're talking about them.
Well, and what I like about them as well, and why I loved having Sean on the show a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, was the fact that they're doing it differently, and it does rub some people off the wrong way. You know, it's strange to see people go on YouTube live.
Yeah,
it's different.
But we're in the information age, right?
Exactly.
And
it's a changing of the guard. And I like when we were talking and we asked them some harder questions, had the answer each time. Had the answer. I do like they're doing it. There's always that concern. They have so much going on. Can they actually fulfill that? Can they follow through with that? And that's always going to be a concern until they do. But I haven't seen anything as of right now telling me that they couldn't. Yeah. So why are we speculating that they will?
Well, there's private players that are in that space too, but
yeah. So they're absolutely tearing right now. I'm trying to look at my broader list. I don't have it up right now, but it's just been interesting seeing these companies change and seeing them start to come back. And you know, cannabis is back in a lot of ways, but watch out.
It's back. Well,
watch out for some.
Well, here's the thing, like a little reverse psychology, right? So over the last couple months when cannabis stocks were down, there were some indicators that you know, we were probably a month or so away from a big run. I think there was some big crosses going on. Do you remember that? When there were some big crosses?
What about?
I don't know if it was the ETFs rebalancing or whatnot, but it was kind of rumored that some banks were positioning themselves.
Yeah, wasn't it Aurora?
There's a couple of them. I don't remember exactly, yeah. And I remember thinking like, yeah, you know what, that does kind of make sense. And now you're starting to hear about, you know, TD bought another 5 million, which of course you always hear about it after the fact, right?
Yeah.
But again, for 2-3 years now, I've been watching people, you know, when everything pulls back, everyone's like getting mad and angry, but you see, you got to kind of figure things out, right? It's like, I'm mad and angry right now. Should I be buying? I'm not telling you when to, but you got to ask yourself that question. And right now, when you see all the rockets going off, you got the FOMO going, you got to be careful. You know what I mean? Especially with the small caps, right? Like you look at, what do you call it, the huge, you know? Like, I mean, I'm happy. Like, listen, there's a lot of new millionaires, multi-millionaires made off that. People that got in early, and that's the key, you got to get in early. But I wouldn't chase that. There's just no way I'd be chasing that. I think it was like it was $1 billion company. What's it at? What's it at right now?
I haven't looked today, but Adam, sorry, I'm just cluing into some of these questions here. So we were, Adam was asking, hey guys, thoughts on Eve? And Eve, if anyone remembers, you should. It was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks tops, where Melinda Rombouts came on, the CEO, and I think they're great. Again, it's one of those smaller caps. I don't know how they're a small cap. I think they IPO'd in July, and that was a bad time to do it just because everything was going down. So their market cap really came down. But they've been thriving, and you know, I think they're down a little bit today, but that's after what, 100% run in a month. Of course, you're going to get a pullback. That's not weakness.
It was
that's just people taking profits.
Yeah, it was right after we had her on. Wasn't it around 28 cents or so?
The day of, it was. They were 28 cents. I contemplated about it, and then it just started running. I think I grabbed it for a little bit, but you know what?
That's why it's good to come on a show like this.
Yeah, 40.
And they're not a client.
It's at 48.5, so it's down. It's down 1% today. But 48.5. It was just at 32 cents like 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's fantastic. They've got something like 200,000 square foot of greenhouse already up or just about to be up. I think she was saying 1 million square feet actually built, not just promised or we're going to do this, in construction, actually built by April 2019. What's not to like about that? I mean, I do think it's an undervalued company, but just personally. But I haven't looked at the trading today. But for that person who was asking me, Adam, I like them. I do. Talk about TGIF. Well, that went on a tear after we talked about Chris about that, eh?
Little Hito Rick.
And you know why, though? I think people are finally realizing, wait a second, why are we looking at American stocks? Because there's a good reason.
Well, you know
what?
Yeah, we're going to try to get a segment going where we can talk and get people on to talk about the U.S. cannabis companies. Because I really want to know a lot more about them.
Yep.
I want to see what we should be following. And then, you know, who knows? That we know that, you know, that sector, or I should say, the United States and those stocks, it's really going to, there's going to be a time when there's going to be some rockets going off.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to follow along closer. And if we can get a segment on here, maybe hit it up twice a month, whatever.
Yep.
Be good.
No, absolutely. And TGIF, aren't they in Nevada? If memory serves correctly.
Yeah, Nevada or California.
I haven't looked into them personally.
See, we need to know more
bit.
about them.
Exactly. But if it is Nevada, they have like 45 million visitors a year, tourists a year. Of course, cannabis companies are going to thrive in that area. And Tony's asking about Marican. It's been positive 20 of the last 24 days. What do you think is driving this? People are waking up.
The sector, man.
It's as simple as that. I mean, it's amazing that they had their GMP license. They're in Germany. They're in Switzerland. They're in
Malta.
Malta. They're all across their facility is phenomenal. They're already selling product. Why were they that low? It's because they had issues beforehand they need to get over.
If you had your money in Canopy, right, a couple months ago, and they went on this big run, and now you see a consolidation, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna pull and I'm gonna look at some more undervalued stuff. I'm not suggesting any one particular stock, but you got to think. You know what I mean? American's probably popping up on a lot of people's lists, like, looking at all their assets and going, I think that's what's happening right now.
And that's the biggest thing, their assets. You got to look on, and always full disclosure for it, client on FTMIG.com, there's a reason for that. It's because we looked at them and said, how on earth did you have an under $200 million market cap when you've got a lot of the components that some of these massive $15 billion companies, they've got the same components of them, many of them. Yeah. Are they the same as Canopy? Canopy's been around for years. Bruce Linton's one of the, if not the best person in the game. They're doing a fantastic job. But if you're looking at something that's $70, or you're looking at something that's at $2, and market cap wise, 15 some odd billion, and around what's American at now, like 300 million or something? I haven't looked today. It's been a little bit of a tear since then. But if you're looking for a relatively safe place, safe as in it looks like they're going to be able to actually do what they're saying that they're going to do.
Yeah.
Those are the types of companies you start looking into. So I think that's why the last 20 days people have been waking up to the fact that
and you know what?
Why weren't they running already?
The small caps and the mid caps are so much fun to watch because they run harder.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of small caps, medium caps, whatever it be, we're going to switch it over to mining because we've got someone on today that you're going to introduce because there's a close friend and somebody who's going to
Johnny Mac
really break this down.
We got Johnny Mac here. Yeah, he's going to help us with some TA stuff. And this is a friend of mine who has helped me out a lot with the TA, and I'm still learning.
We've got this chart up here.
I am, guys. How are you?
Good. So we're going to start with Garibaldi.
Okay, so you want to talk Garibaldi first?
Yeah, let's talk Garibaldi. Sure.
Okay, so full disclosure here, I do own the stock. I've owned the stock for quite a while. So when I look at Garibaldi, I think one of the things people following the story are sort of, close to. They know that we're expecting news in the near term. I think, it's come out recently. I think BMR basically said, expect news or almost guaranteed news by the middle of September. So we know that we should be getting some sort of news-driven event at some point. People that have been holding the stock have been looking for some results. Basically assays and what's the company been doing since June when they first started to drill. So that event, and whenever that news comes out, whether it's this week, whether it's next week, that is going to drive, the next big push, whether it's going to be down or up. So when I look at the chart, recently it's been under a bit of selling pressure. You can see since basically mid-May, we've been under selling pressure here. It did have a nice rebound. The volume picked up one day. We had a nice lower wick. It rebounded, but again, we're getting that selling pressure. And we're back around the 225 level, and I see that as kind of a support zone. So we rebounded in late March on that level. We sort of rebounded from that level here, even though we did have an intraday move below. So I see the 225 area personally as an area that I'd like to see hold. And to get this back looking bullish again, we're going to have to lock in a higher low at some point. So I definitely would like to see a rebound back up off this area, and maybe the maybe the news that's forthcoming will give us that. So one thing for me, I look at DGI as more of a longer term play. So if I kind of switch to a longer term view, to go to let's take a look at the longer term view. So this is a logarithmic chart, and the reason I use logarithmic chart is because the stock has made such a huge move in the last year and a half, and it gives you your percentage moves as equal distance on your chart versus a normal chart where this would sort of lose its perspective. But when you look at it this way and you look at the percentage moves it's making compared to the run it had last summer and fall, we're actually in a fairly, relatively speaking, a fairly narrow trading range. So, you can annotate this a bit and say,
hey John,
here's your.
Would you be able to zoom in just maybe by like 20% on your screen?
I can try.
There you go.
Is that better?
Beautiful. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at this trading range, it's more or less been in. So I like to see this on stock. So when you think about it, this run that we had, I mean, this is a substantial run. And anytime a stock does this, technical analysts look for the Bollinger Bands to offer resistance. What we have here is called walking the bands, where the buying pressure is so significant that you're constantly pushing the boundaries. Push, push, push. You see this volatility expansion. The Bollinger Bands, this orange area on my screen, is just getting really wide. And I mean, that's some significant momentum. And with any stock, you can't keep that sort of momentum. At some point, it has to consolidate. And you have to remember that there was people getting in the stock down here, sub 25 cents. Even when the volume started to come in, a lot of money came in, sub 50 cents, even sub $1. Lots of people took positions in the stock. So when this hit the top, I think around 520, people were in significant positions of profit. So it's very natural for the stock to have a consolidation. And this is very natural. So what you're seeing is basically, and we see the volume drop off here, and I'll highlight that on the chart. So if you look at the volume bars in this section versus here, so this is the volume that drove all the gains, and then in this consolidation we've been in for the last, say, 8-9 months, the volume has really dropped off, and the trading range is getting tighter. So we had a high, we put in a low, sort of a lower high, higher low, and we're in this sort of what almost like coiling behavior. So things are just getting tight, and this is just shares exchanging hands. It's the people that got in early, selling out, and they might be happy with their profit, and the new people that are taking their positions, they might be happy to buy around $2 because they're looking at this as a long-term play with potential to be $10, $20, $30 stock potentially if the company delivers some of the results that people think they could. So they're happy to be entering here and buying from the people that bought way down here. So that process of shares trading hands as the stock consolidates is very healthy. And the reason I like it is what it does is it sets the stock up for a nice move. If they were to post some good results now, a lot of these shares have left weak hands or into stronger hands, and if we were to make a move up and break out of this range, that would be very bullish, and it would set it up for a very big run. So I would expect it to beat, potentially the previous high and push even higher, and that's because we've had this nice long consolidation period. So a couple things of note when I look at the Garibaldi chart, you can actually draw a nice little angular resistance line on CUMSA.
This is pretty cool.
So there's been basically seven touches on this trend line. So anytime you get a trend line where you've got lots of touches, the more times it touches and rejects. So reject, 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 reject. So there's 7 touches. So we can be pretty confident that's a fairly robust angular resistance. So one thing I would be watching is if we get good news, can we break out of this downtrending angular resistance line? So that would be one thing that would be good. So that's one thing to watch. The other thing that I'm watching is, just even breaking this recent high. So if we were to break the recent high at $3, so I have my eye on $3 as resistance, and then the peak previous over at about $3.30, which is $3.30 for whatever reason in the past has been a key sort of support and resistance zone. We're trading below it, so we would expect it to offer us resistance on the way up. So those are sort of the resistance levels I have my eye on. One reason I'm sort of bullish on it lately, even though it hasn't looked the best, is I'm starting to see a little bit of momentum divergence from a bullish standpoint. So what I mean by that is you look at your stochastic oscillator at the top, which is a measure of momentum. See that even though on this recent run we put in a lower high from before, we're actually putting in a higher high here. So even though the price action is unable to push the same high as before, we are getting increasing momentum. So what that can tell us is the next low that we form can give us possibly a bull setup. So we would look for a potentially tradable bottom in here, right where we are now. So if we were to get a nice move off this bottom, especially with volume, that would be what I would want to see. And I think we will get the volume from the news. The question is, which way is it going to go? Or is the market going to like the news, or is the market going to be disappointed? And we don't really know what market expectations are until the news comes out, and how the stock reacts is going to give us information about, has this news exceeded the market expectations? Did it more or less meet market expectations, or has it failed to meet market expectations?
But it's prime and ready to pop in one direction.
Yeah, I see this as a potential positive. That let's see if we get a possible tradable bottom here, and for me to confirm that, I'd want to see this indicator come back up, move back above 50, get back into positive momentum territory. Another thing that kind of popped out at me as well, gents, from the weekly standpoint, is we're starting to see a little bit of divergence from an accumulation standpoint. So if I throw this on the chart, so the first time this accumulation distribution is sort of a measure of your buying pressure, and you can see the black line, I've superimposed it on the screen. You can see it kind of follows the trend fairly closely. Then all of a sudden we get to the most recent time frame, and we're getting this split. You see the price is sort of moving downwards, but this accumulation isn't really confirming that downtrend. So that's an interesting thing I noted as well. So that's sort of a positive. That could imply a bit of what we would call ghost buying pressure here. So some underlying buying pressure on the stock. And so that's sort of, I view that as a positive as well. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on to make to see if that continues.
So who's selling this thing, Mr. Mac?
Well, that's a good question, Carl. I think so. One way to combine technical analysis and chart analysis is to say, okay, what's causing the downtrend? So I brought up the house positions on the stock here. Can you guys see that okay?
You know what? I think you could zoom out a little bit now. They've got you on all 4 screens. There you go. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's look back over, say, the last month, just say since August 1st. So where is your selling coming from? A lot of it is coming from an anonymous seller, and you know, a lot of people see this in trading. Anonymous can be anybody. A lot of people can trade under anonymous. They're simply hiding their brokerage. They don't want people to know who they are. But as a percentage of the sell volume, just, you know, arbitrarily since the beginning of August, we can see anonymous is, you know, basically a third of the selling. And from net house positions, no one really is close to them. So, you know, they do buy and they do sell, and a lot of market making activity occurs under anonymous. So you're going to have anonymous buying and as well as anonymous selling, and that's simply you know, actors in the market performing market making, trying to make a market, facilitate trades. But when you look at it from a net standpoint, you know, no one else is really close. So this is where your selling has come from. And interestingly, this is a stock I sort of watch quite frequently. And I've noticed a lot lately that selling is coming from, it looks to me like an institutional seller is trimming their position. So you see a lot of trades going through on the dark pool, the Triac Match Now dark pool. Right now you're not seeing it. You're seeing a lot of ITG Corp. That's another
Institution?
brokerage house that I sort of use as an indicator of institutional activity, because I don't believe they have a big retail trading presence at all. So ITG, when I see them selling, and I think they were the second largest net seller. So these two guys right here would be where some of your selling pressure is coming from. And this to me looks like a fund that's sort of trimming its position. It could be more than one fund, or it could be, you know, it could be a single fund that has exposure to the stock, and they're either looking to get out of their position or trim their exposure. You know, and you might ask, well, why would they want to do that? And there could be multiple reasons. One of the reasons could be, you know, sort of macroeconomic driven. If you think about taking a look at sort of our nickel spot prices and where they have gone. So since early June, see nickel hit a peak above $7, and it's been trending down since. Mm-hmm. So that's your 6-month view. So when you compare that to the GGI chart, if we go back to the weekly view, the daily view. So this is our last 6 months as well. Those peaks are actually fairly close together. The selling on GGI started a little bit earlier, but you can see that GGI has been trending down, and at the same time we had this fall in the nickel spot price.
Interesting.
So this could be giving us some, you know, a reason for some of the selling pressure we're seeing. And it simply could be, you know, as the price of the commodity falls, the fund manager decides, okay, we need to trim our exposure. Yeah. You know, stay within our risk reward tolerances. However, you know, their fund happens to work.
Yeah, and I mean, some delays of news, maybe a little bit of combo there.
Yeah, I mean, the news has been delayed, and I think it's caused a lot of nervousness, maybe some consternation in the market. It's just, certainly among the retail segment. But I think if you're a fund manager, you think, well, okay, the stock hasn't had news in a while. You know, maybe things aren't going as well. If that's what you believe, you know, the reason for news being delayed, you know, if you call it a delay, some people would argue that, you know, this is a big drill program. It takes a while to get assays. Is there really that much of a delay? No. I mean, some people are of that opinion. Other people think, you know, maybe results aren't going to be as good as we thought because it's pushed back. So if you're of that opinion and you own a fund, you know, you might be trimming your exposure a bit because, you know, you want to reduce your risk ahead of results. So those are both possibilities, I think, as to, you know, to explain the selling pressure. Interestingly enough, I would say in the last 2 days, so this whole period here, when I was watching the trading on the stock, I saw lots of that dark pool trading going on. And the last 2 days, I have not seen that. So that rebound we got yesterday, we had a nice lower wick. So the stock rebounded nicely, and today I haven't seen it much as well. But we do have that sort of resurgent of ITG coming in, so I see this as institutional selling pressure as well. One encouraging thing on the chart is, the day that it did, these 2 days where it sort of pushed up, it didn't take much to push the stock up.
No, it didn't.
550,000 shares pushed the stock up considerably. I think
20%.
Yeah, something like that. So the bottom, we were up, 17% in 1 day on only 550,000 shares. So when there wasn't a lot of sellers, when you didn't have that institutional seller, or I guess I should word that differently, when you had some interested buyers, it didn't take much to push the stock up. And I think that speaks to, what I was talking about earlier, that the float of the company has tightened up considerably. We've had that nice consolidation for about 9 months now, and shares have moved into stronger hands. And that's that's positive for the company. That means if we see some good news, people trying to accumulate new positions, if they've been sort of on the sidelines, maybe they sold out of their stock and they're looking to go back in. When they go to take their positions again, it's not going to take much to push it up, because that supply of shares has been dried up.
Yeah, and that fund, if we get some good news, that fund might say, I'm not selling, and then that cuts off the supply even more. This thing is just primed to rip. We get some good news, we are looking nice. That 1 year chart looks really good.
Yeah, I agree. I like the weekly chart, gives you sort of the bigger picture. I don't see a lot of the the dark pool selling. So usually if you're looking for dark pool selling, most people are going to see this bid and offer here. And the dark pool is simply, it's hidden liquidity. Brokers can't even see it. It's somebody that's basically sitting. They'll sit between the bid and the offer, and anytime someone wants to buy shares, it'll actually get filled on the it'll route through the dark pool, and they'll split the bid and offer price. So for example, if I was to buy, say, 5,000 shares, and there was there might be an institutional seller looking to unwind his position, and he wants to do it with as little market impact as possible, he'll actually be sitting here hidden, and someone will execute an order and they would get a fill at, say, 233, and all these shares here sitting on the offer wouldn't get hit.
Right.
And you sit perched between the bid and the offer, and in that way you're going to just soak up the buying as the buyers come. Keep in mind, these institutional sellers, if you're a fund, you want to sell and get the best bang for your buck. You're not looking to manipulate the price. This is not a short attack. You're not trying to scare people out of the stock. You're simply trying to either unwind or trim your position and maintain, the best average cost that you can. And, minimizing market impact is a big part of that. So you could also sort of, taking that into mind, look at the chart and say, okay, if we want this area to hold, then if I'm the guy trying to unwind a position, I don't want to see the support level break. So, maybe that makes sense to let the stock breathe a bit. Yesterday they kind of laid off and let the stock recover a bit. Maybe they let it come up a bit before they start selling again. Mm-hmm. Or, the news blows everybody out of the water and they say, why were we trimming in the first place?
Yeah,
and
you cut off the supply.
Everybody does well. So.
Can you go back to the level 2? And
sure.
Can you put it on market by broker? And if we look at let's go to 305, scroll down to the 305 on the ask. I want to see some, who is that? Is that TD? Yeah.
TD, yeah.
That's one order?
One order, yeah.
Wow. And is that that's not a resistance level, is it? Because $3 would be
$3 is it's close to resistance. Think of resistances as areas rather than specific levels. I tend to think of resistance levels as areas rather than a specific price. But yeah, basically $3 territory. Those even dollar levels always provide what some people call psychological resistance. $2.50, $3, $3.50, etc., $2. So on the downside, I would be looking for $2 to be a support zone. Even though we don't see shares here, but I think you'd see buyers move in.
Yeah.
If we did, if the price were to fall to that level, I think you'd see buyers move in. And one of the important things, if you're a junior investor, if you're new to sort of level 2, this does not give you a complete picture of where where the buying and selling is going to be. You have to keep in mind that the players in the markets don't always want to show their cards. If they have a bunch of orders stacked where they want to buy, that's no different than playing poker and showing the other players at the table your hand. So if you're trying to keep your hand hidden and your intentions hidden, you're not going to step in necessarily and make yourself visible until you're ready to buy. And you always want the cheapest price possible if you're looking to buy. So you're going to keep your as the saying goes, play your cards close to your chest so that nobody can see them.
And we are noticeably sitting well underneath the last raise, which was a flow through. Was that 330?
320.
I think.
320?
Yeah, 320, 330, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, some big players got in on that. Do you mind talking a little bit about the fundamentals? Like, what are we looking for? I hold this. Brandon, do you have any?
Yeah, I have for a long time.
And Johnny Mac does. What are we looking for here? What do you guys want to see? Some step out holes?
Yeah, personally for me, I'm not a geologist, but I think what the market is looking for here is really tonnage. Last year when they drilled, they hit some outstanding grades. I think Peter Lightfoot remarked, correct me if I'm wrong on the number, but I think the hole they hit was among the top 3 percentile in the world for holes. That hole 14, I think it was close to 20 meters at over 8%, and you throw in all the other elements in there, the copper and your platinum group elements, and your nickel equivalent is well into the teens, I believe. Wow. I want to say 14% comes to mind, maybe. Yep. Nickel equivalent. I might be getting that number wrong.
Yeah, don't quote back.
But anyway, so we know there's grades there. So one of the big hits, the criticisms is, people think this might be, say, an alpine deposit, so it would be really small pods with very little continuity between, or everyone said the holes were kind of drilled tightly together. So I think to sort of put those critics to rest, you want to see some nice step-out holes drilled where they're hitting some, continue to hit these high grades, and be able to prove a bit, some continuity of mineralization between the holes. And that you're hitting some other deposits of mineralization that are still this high grade, and it's showing continuity around, so that when you're mining it, you're not mining some very isolated and discrete pods, that there's sort of a continuity here. The disseminated mineralization, that could be sort of an X factor. Everyone seems to focus on the high grade stuff, but the disseminated stuff is what's really going to help build your tonnage. So hitting some nice long intercepts of disseminated mineralization would be really positive. So I'd like to see something like that, and with the high tenor here, hopefully the grades of that disseminated continue to to be positive. And so those are sort of the things what I'm looking for. I don't know how many holes they will be reporting, but I think the market is looking for, step out holes that show continuity, that show good grades, some other areas of the high mineralization, as well as some good disseminated. And I think if they can provide that in the news release and maybe speak to how the rest of the drilling is going, I think that would be positive.
Yeah.
And hopefully there'll be some drill plan maps and cross sections and stuff, so everyone can properly sort of dissect where the drill holes have been done, and build their own models, and give form their own opinions on how continuous this mineralization is.
Well, there's still lots of drilling to go on. So I mean, if they can come up with some step outs, we know the grades are good, but we see those grades. And the float is pretty tightly held. I mean, I don't see a lot of people selling. This is my speculation. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's the first news release on the drills, and there should be a lot more news coming.
Yeah.
Can we go back to
arguably probably one of the most anticipated sets of drill results this year on the venture. So many people have made their sort of compared their company to Garibaldi. It's got some respect. Last year a lot of people questioned it, And this year there's been made a lot of references made to Garibaldi and the Garibaldi discovery. So, I mean, they have some expectations to meet, but very highly anticipated. There'll be lots of eyes, I'm sure, on the news, and it'll be interesting to see how the market reacts and to see where everyone's expectations are versus what Mother Nature has provided here.
Yeah, and the market's definitely factoring in a big discovery here. So obviously, if they don't have a good news release here, that spring is going to go in the wrong direction. Can you pull up the what do you call it? The house positions. I want to have a look at GMP. GMP, number 74 in your hearts. And
okay, not much, not active in the last month. How far back do you want me to go?
A year. I want to see what percentage it is.
Just go to Sprott, you'll see 30%.
Where is it?
So 1.1% of the volume over the last year.
TD's got 20%.
But you know very well that was these are all shares that are locked down, and you have to keep in mind Eric Sprott took a lot of the the off-market shares right through the private placements.
Yeah.
And he was initially buying through Mackey Research as well. So when he first made the big buys, where it sort of became known to the market, I think it was around $1. He sort of switched later to GMP, but Mackey were, I remember, if I remember right, when he was filing his buys, the Mackey purchases on the market sort of corresponded to his buying activity.
So who's net negative right now? We got PI,
Anonymous.
Anon.
Yeah, and this can be multiple people. It will, I mean, guaranteed it'll be multiple people, and it's so tough to figure out who this seller is. A lot of funds like to use Anonymous just to kind of disguise their activity. And
okay.
So
Brandon, any questions on Garibaldi?
No, I love the way you went through this, because so many of us just look at today's share price, yesterday's share price. You get other people start looking at the L2s, the graphs. You have gone well beyond that, showing the graphs from recently, over the last weeks, over the last year, going through the dark pool, seeing how people or in different institutions are most likely the buyers or sellers, and you're putting all these pieces together where all of a sudden you've got a way better picture of what's actually going on. You can never actually guess it. There's always fundamentals, like the results about to come out, that are going to change things. But it really does paint a picture that people are just waiting. The share price, it's coming down, but it's not a massive sell-off. That's important to know the difference.
Yep.
Yeah, the volumes, you have to, volume is so important. So, volume precedes price movement. So again, if we sort of, take it back to the weekly view to get sort of the longer term picture, you look at the volume that moved this stock way back then, and look where it is now. I mean, this is nothing. This is just all, and this is consolidation. This is normal, healthy. When you consolidate a stock, you expect the volume to be low. And this is exactly what you expect. So this is not, this is not unusual. This is not something to be worried about. This is shares moving from weak hands to strong hands. The people averaging up maybe that like the stock. Myself personally, lucky enough to get shares down here, was buying all the way up here. I did average up a bit, so I have been part of the buying in here, and I brought my average up, but I'm confident in the play. It's not a guarantee. If you can assign risk to the junior resource sector, I think it's arguably the most risky sector out there in terms of junior investing, because you can get some, one day you can be trading really well, and the next day, the company posts results that the market doesn't like. You can lose 70-80% of your market cap in a day, and the people, even the guys relying on stop losses and stuff, that's not going to protect you here on some of these junior mining companies, because the results come out after market or pre-market. There's no opportunity to jump out on the momentum. It's it's almost like a step change. So
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
very
and you know
important with these companies to manage your risk. And, you know, this is not investment advice, but I mean, with anything, and especially these juniors, make sure you're managing your risk and you know, you're keeping your exposure to the company reasonable. You know, everyone says, you know, there's people that say Eric's broad, it's a speculator. You know, he can afford to speculate, other people can't. That's not true. Everyone can afford to speculate. It's the dollar amount that they can afford to speculate on that changes. So,
keep
you know,
yourself
make
in
sure
check
that the dollar
emotionally.
amount that you're, check your emotion and you know, make sure that you're speculating within you know, an appropriate amount of money that's not going to cripple you if you know, you bet the wrong way, sort of thing.
I remember calling Johnny Mac.
Yeah.
and the stock was around 60 cents. I'm like,
Yeah.
John, I'm getting a little emotional here. He's like, well, that's not good. And I bought more. But wow.
Well, I appreciate it so much, John. We're running out of time. We need more of these. These are great. I love
No
it.
pressure.
I love hearing it. No,
He's amazing.
No,
He
I
did
just
an
mean in
amazing
general,
job.
we need to go through technical analysis more often on these shows in different ways. You and I jump on. I love it. I
can't
love
do
knowing
this.
more about this.
I can't do that stuff.
Well, you're not Rain Man?
No. But I mean, he just helped a lot of people. Anyone
Yeah.
who's been following Garibaldi, I mean, we got to definitely cut this segment up and put it on our channel because a lot of people need to see this stuff.
Absolutely.
We didn't,
Well, I do appreciate my man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon as well.
want
And
more.
we'd love having you on.
All right, Johnny Mac.
Sounds good,
thanks.
guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take
Cheers.
care.
All right. Too good. I love it.
Just gonna give him
I love
a
it.
bow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you something right now.
What's this?
Check it out.
Give me oh, is this my version of it?
You're gonna have to, you know, maybe start hitting the gym up a little more. 'Cause
Whoa, 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 whoa,
You can
whoa,
have
whoa.
that though. but
This,
it's an
I know, this
extra
is like a
large.
3XL. How much do you want me to hit the gym?
Get pumping, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, there were some interesting
Here.
things with, you looked over at Delta 9 and you looked over at Speakeasy. There were some resignations.
Was there?
There was. You got to always be paying attention. And there's a certain name that is attached to the all shares movement. And it's just interesting to see that, you know. Can't read into it too much, except for the fact that it was a news release of resignations.
Yep. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Hence the throwing the shirt and then telling me I need to
gotta
gain
give-
weight.
No.
But no, I love that kind of stuff because when I first, I mean, I've been very vocal with you. When I first started investing, especially when I started investing in cannabis companies, I was always fundamentals. I loved looking into a company and seeing how they stick out. But I said something earlier when Tony was on the show, and I said, it's amazing how many good companies have terrible stocks and how many terrible companies have amazing stocks. So you can't just go off fundamentals. If you do that, you're going to get burned.
Yeah.
I've been burned off of going off just fundamentals because you need to take into account as well what's going on in the background. Are people, is one brokerage firm selling everything? Is a major shareholder trying to get out of a position? You know, you need to track those things as best as you can because you might want to get out too. That might be a foresight of something happening.
That's why you don't have 28 stocks in your portfolio.
AA, I think I'm at 7.
Unless you have like
I'm at
13 interns.
I'm
then-
at like 7 or 8.
Really?
I gained a few, yeah. Well, I had to get on Juju and DNAX. Those were I knew DNAX was going to be going in the next couple of weeks.
Blockstrade.
They're the genome to sale basically, so it'll track right from the seed all the way through. So when you buy it in Manitoba or BC, you're going to know exactly where that came from, where it was processed, and it tracks it along the way. That's going to be important. The government of Canada. has
Yeah,
already said
it's
they
going to be
need it.
important. You know what was
I
important
hope they're
is
going to be one of the big players.
it's more important that they got rid of someone that was attached to Bridgemark.
Another resignation.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about Blockstream too much until they prove some stuff. I want to see some news releases, to be honest with you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I like it. I follow them. But they made a bad decision getting involved with some people.
Sometimes you don't know. When
Yeah,
you're,
well,
when you're
you know
buying,
what?
if
I
you're
mean,
buying a shelf,
if
how
I'm-
do you
if-
know? A lot of the times.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to give anyone the benefit of the doubt
Yeah.
on that. I want to see some news releases. I want to see some changes.
Yep.
Having said that, I did take a position.
You hypocrite.
Small one.
And that's where sometimes you look at the stock and
I'm a
stock's trading well
speculator,
and you're
man.
looking at it.
I just contradicted myself.
You did.
I think I'm going to do well on that over the
Yeah.
next couple weeks.
But,
We'll see.
but that's why I got a few, and I have my server like GGI I've had for months now. CCW I've had for months. American I've had for months. Play it's halted. I'm gonna have that for a while. IEX it's been halted since January. Come on, Roger. I know you can get it out
You really
there.
know how to tie up your money, don't you?
Yeah, I know. Into Mountain Valley, the private placement.
Ooh, Mountain Valley.
So
what's that? Mountain Valley.
Early opportunities. I saw it. You know, I actually put a large chunk of my portfolio into that because I knew we were getting busier with this. So I wanted to be able to. I knew I couldn't keep handling 27 stocks we were doing, but those are the opportunities though that take more time to mature. Yeah. But I love hearing about them and searching for them because those are the ones where I strongly believe you'll have a higher return. You have to take on some risk. So really looking at the company though.
Well, yeah, I just want all our friends to get into things early.
Yep.
You know,
that's gonna be our goal.
It's one of those things, and there's going to be a lot of other opportunities. So I look forward to talking about those.
Absolutely. And let's see where this takes us. We got a little bit more time for this rush for this year. Who knows what happens next year? That's when it gets a little bit more crazy. But as we get closer, we can start dissecting that a little bit more. Right now, I'm all worried about results coming out. Let's go GGI. I want to see those results.
Saw that chart. That chart is just—it's ready for a big move.
It's primed and waiting for good news.
I'm hoping it's going to go that way.
And if it's bad news,
if it goes that way, a lot of friends and family are going to be like, yeah.
No kidding, no kidding.
But yeah, TIG, watching that.
Yeah, what's it finishing up at? We're going into Power Hour. We're heading over to James into Power Hour soon.
Maybe James bought some of that today.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. But no, it's been a great show. I like this one. This one we had less CEOs on this time because we had people on for education. It was a lot of learning. I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah.
It came from Kamal and going through all the cannabis stuff.
The Lyme disease.
I had no idea the Lyme disease.
Yeah, because I wasn't able to.
I had no idea.
I haven't listened to the whole interview yet, right? But I caught some of it.
Yeah.
We gotta have him on.
We haven't even
We're having him on again.
We definitely. Yeah. If he's willing, he's coming on. We talked to Tony about Triumph Gold Corp, not just about what they have, which is I find really exciting, especially as an investor, but just speaking about all these different aspects of mining, just learning from the VP of Expert. Like he's the one who searched for this.
You know what we can do? Because sometimes we're not always able to get here, but we can do some stuff in our Facebook group.
Yep, podcasts, all that.
Whatever. We can get some of these people to come on Skype. We have the technology, so maybe we'll do some more of that stuff.
Yep. And then the TA work, love that as well. So
and
I hope people learn from this.
On the TA stuff, you know what? This is why you want to get into our Discord chat rooms. Because we have people like Johnny Mack, there's probably another 5 people that can help explain some of this stuff, right? So, we've got a good culture there. You want to take advantage of that.
Is this a social media plug? Because we got about 30 seconds left. Follow us on Follow the Money Investor Group on Facebook. FTMIG.com is our website. We'll give you the Discord. Just make a post in the group. We'll give you the Discord room to get into. Over 400 people talk about stocks every single day. And all shares matter. If you go into Twitter, that's a good segue. You go into Twitter, FDM Investment. You'll find us on Twitter as well. I can't remember the Instagram one. We have an account. Go on there.
Can you hold that up and give an angry face?
I can't. I'm always happy. But enjoy, everyone.
See ya.